Hi folks, Alex Klingelhoeffer here with Exencial Wealth Advisors. It's 6:51 here on a Tuesday morning. It's April 20th, 2021. Here's your morning jog around the economic headlines of the world. I'm going to start off here in the U.S. where the State Department is going to announce 80% of the world, that's about 130 countries, will be moved to the do not travel category per the CDC, per the State Department. Now, that's of course a huge increase. Right now, there's only about 34 countries on that level 4 or highest priority. Of course, COVID's a big part of that. Folks traveling, the U.S. wants to get ahead of the game with, hey, don't go to places where COVID is spreading. Now, that's sort of in contrast to the news that we chatted about yesterday. More than 50% of all U.S. adults are already partially vaccinated for COVID. So my hope certainly would make sense that this is a fairly temporary measure. Once enough folks are vaccinated, I would imagine that we'll start to delineate between travel advisories for folks that are vaccinated and folks that aren't. China imported 8% more crude than it did from Saudi Arabia year over year. Some UAE shipments also increased, and there's also some rumors about Iranian oil being marked as UAE and other countries' oil finding its way into China's supply. China seems to have really fully recovered in terms of energy consumption from the global pandemic, and that's causing quite a stir with the IEA. They're issuing a dire warning per CNBC, a huge warning about carbon emissions. I think here's the number: 33 billion metric tons of carbon they project will be released in 2021. That's up 1.5 billion metric tons this year. Most of that's coming from Asia. Most of that's coming from additional coal and fossil fuels being burnt halfway around the world. And of course, U.S. re-entering the Paris Climate Accord. Here this week, Joe Biden's going to meet with leaders, discuss the U.S.'s goals and how the U.S. is going to combat climate change, reduce emissions, the goal to be basically half of 2005 levels by 2030. That's only 9 years. That's a lot of reduction to go. One oil major does have a solution, Exxon. They have an idea. Hey, Joe, how about $100 billion to build a carbon sequestration plant outside of Houston? The project would cost $100 billion. It would sequester 50 million tons of CO2 a year. That's the equivalent of taking about 11 million cars off the road. Certainly a tremendous scale to that project. When you talk about 50 million tons of CO2, of course, we're going to do 1.5 billion more tons of CO2 in 2021 compared to 2020. So it's sort of, taking a teaspoon in the bucket. But hey, at least it's a technology that may be scalable. Maybe those costs will come down over time. Just to give you some comparison on the cost of that $100 billion project and how much money that is, for the Cowboys fans out there, Cowboy Stadium costs $1.5 billion to construct. So they want to build 67 Cowboy stadiums in Houston to take a teaspoon out of the bucket of carbon CO2 emissions. Seems like a very premature technology at this point, but may need some government subsidies to make that happen if we want to have these climate goals accomplished. Those are the major headlines I had here for this morning. If you want additional information throughout the day, feel free to follow me on Twitter. It's OKCCFA CFP. Until then, I'm out.